Today we're gonna rate all classes and elite specs in Guild Wars 2 regarding their overall performance. So how are they performing if you combine every single situation in all game modes that they could be in? Of course, this is highly dependent on how much you value each game mode. So if you're really more interested in PvE content, then that might change quite a bit. So this is an even more personal opinion than usual, but of course it has some really valuable arguments in there. So please bear with me in that regard. And if you have your own takes, please let me know in the comments below. So I'm rating here how well is a class performing across all game modes. That means that if a class is really good in World vs. World, but is really bad in PvE and PvP, it will get lower than it should be if it's only about World vs. World. I hope that makes sense. This tier list is more for people that want to start a new class, want to get into the game and want to know how a class performs, if they want to stick with it for the whole game, so for new players, and for somewhat newish players that don't have all classes yet on their characters and on their account. But of course, for veterans, that can also be helpful if you want to try out something new in a different game mode. That can be helpful. I try to cover every class in every game mode, so explicitly state it's good in PvP, it's bad in World vs. World or something, but sometimes I might not get every single situation for every class down. It's just too much to handle in one single video, but I try my best. So with that out of the way, let's start with the core classes. I would say core Mesmer for me overall is D tier. Yes, you can make it work in roaming. You can also play it in PvE, of course, if you want to, but it's not very good in comparison to the other specs, especially. Why I put it here, D tier means that classes are just inferior to the strong classes in S and A tier, for example, but you can play every single class in every game mode, but especially in competitive modes, that will mean that you probably will not succeed as easily as you would on another class. Just want to put it out of the way. Especially in PvE, you can play every class as you really need to. It's not optimal, but you could. Just saying, especially in open world as well. So let's continue with core Elementalist. I think core Elementalist is also D tier for me. It can be played in all modes and is somewhat decent because I would say Elementalist has a lot of weapon skills that can be used, just baseline, but the traits are not supporting it that well, and especially the utility skills are lackluster when you don't play full DPS. So I will put it there. Then we have core Engineer. That's actually the first interesting core class. I would say core Engineer is either B tier. If you want to be really aggressive, you could also go in A tier. I think it's a very strong spec. You can play it in PvP with Spear really efficiently. You can play it actually decently in roaming as well, just because of the same build in PvP. And you can also play it very decently, especially in PvE, as some kind of very crazy Ayano style condition build. It's also very valid. It's actually very interesting how you can make core Engineer work in a lot of situations just because of the Spear and how much utility with the kits and stuff it has. It's really good. And then we have Necromancer. I think core Necromancer is, I would say, low C tier, just because you can play it in roaming and PvP decently well. In PvE, I would say it's tanky, yes, but it's just too slow and too little damage to really make it work. I would also say in competitive modes it's not the craziest pick, but it's definitely something that works. So overall, I would say C tier is fair. Then we have core Revenant. I mean, that's just the lowest of the low. It's never designed in a way that you can use it for the most part, I would say. It's just, it came out with Herald together, so they already knew that Herald will be the elite spec that everyone uses, so it's not that good in any game mode. It's just underperforming everywhere. I will try to make a bit work in World vs. World, but I don't know. It's just, it feels very lackluster. Then we have core Guardian. I think core Guardian is actually the first really good pick. You could make an argument to put it in A tier because you can play it as a DPS in World vs. World. You can play it as a PvP support. It's really good if you want to have some kind of easier support. It's actually very good there as well. You can make a very low effort, low intensity build in PvE with Hammer. It's, I would say, in a good spot. You can also play it as some kind of very nice solo build. I have a build guide about that as well. So I think core Guardian is the first very decent core spec that you could, just because of the very nice baseline kits that it has in its utility and just the weapons as well. It's very good. Then we have core Ranger. I think core Ranger is also C tier for me. You can play it very nice in open world, PvE and stuff. Also in PvP it's okay, but in World vs. World it's just, the pet dies in Cirque instantly, and it's for roaming it's just inferior to Untamed. I think in all game modes it's inferior to Untamed, but it's definitely better than D tier, I would say, because it has some value, at least for new players. The pet can help you out. I would say it's low C tier. And we have core Thief. I think Core Thief is actually interesting because you can also play it in a lot of modes, especially in competitive modes. It's actually very annoying with X and stuff. And you can also play it in PvE actually. It has a very crazy high DPS number for the core build. So I would say for me B tier because it doesn't bring a lot of utility, but it's very bursty, very strong in DPS compartment. So if you enjoy this kind of playstyle, Core Thief might be for you. Then we have Core Warrior. Core Warrior, I would say, is also for me C tier. You can play it decently in PvP and World vs. World as some kind of really nasty tank, some kind of that. But for the most part, it's not that crazy. You can also make it work actually in PvE. So maybe I put it in low B tier. I would say in PvE it works decently well as 2 to some extent, but it's also overshadowed by other Warrior Elite specs. So yeah, I mean, you could make an argument for putting it in B tier, but I will leave it now for high C tier. That are the core classes. Let's now continue with Ranger. So Ranger, we have Druid. I think Druid is a really strong spec. I think Druid can be played in all game modes. It's extremely strong in PvE. It doesn't have the crazy solo build, but in group content it's amazing as a support. In World vs. World it's also very good as a support. In PvP it's not that good as a support, but it can be played as some tanky duelist. So I would say overall Druid for me low S tier. It's a very good pick for people that enjoy to play something supportive, something tanky, and that still is a Ranger. I think it's a good pick. It might not be on top of S tier, but it's a very good pick. Then we have Soul Beast. Soul Beast is interesting. Soul Beast you can play as a very nice DPS build in PvE. It has also a very decent solo build. It is not the best build when it comes to World vs. World Circ play. It's just, even though the stances might work on paper, but in general I would say it's just too weak with what it can output. So I would say in World vs. World you can use it as a roamer. In PvP it's also okay as some kind of duelist, but it's not that crazy in competitive modes. In PvE it's really good, so I would put it in high A tier because of that. It's very, if you just look at PvE it would be S tier, but in the competitive modes it's not that crazy. That's why it's an A tier. I have to say Druid is also not that crazy, but it's get carried that it can be used in Circ play as well. That's the big part. And then we have Untamed. Untamed for me is an easy S tier. It's extremely strong in all game modes. You can play it in roaming, in PvP as a duelist. It's extremely strong. It's extremely strong as some kind of roamer. It's really, really good in PvE. It's probably best solo build. It has a very high DPS build. It has a very high quickness DPS build. And you can also play it in some kind of clouding build in World vs. World Circing. But in Circs in general, the pet dies too fast to really make it work. So that's the only downside of Untamed. But other than that, Untamed, easy S tier. If you're interested in only one specific game mode and want to see how a class or elite spec performs in that game mode, be sure to check out my other tier lists dedicated to those game modes. Links of them are in the description below. They are always the most up-to-date ones. Let's now continue with Thief. So Thief is interesting. We have Daredevil and Deadeye. Those two are playing very similar, but we have the very easy DPS build and quickness DPS build that Unload Deadeye is, and therefore I would put a Deadeye in a really high 8. It's extremely strong. I would say in roaming and PvP it's playable, but in Circ play it's not that good, and in, let's say in PvP it's also not the best anymore. It's still good, but it's not the best. So that's why an 8 here, but it has an extremely easy build to play in PvE. There's a very good solo build rather. It's very good as well. So maybe low S tier I would say. Then we have Daredevil. Daredevil is for me, yeah, it's hard to say. Maybe it's B tier for me, because you can play it as a roamer in World vs. World. You can play it as a roamer in PvP. It is a DPS build in PvE, yes, but solo build doesn't exist really, and it's not really that versatile, and it's also quite challenging to perform on if you want to get the highest damage numbers. It's just a shadow of its former self, so I would put it in B tier. You can play some nasty builds with it in World vs. World and PvP, but I think it's not as good as Deadeye, for example, even though they fill somewhat the same role. Then we have Spectre. Spectre is interesting. It's not filling the same role at all. It's more like a support. It can also play some power version in World vs. World in PvP, but I would say it's more like a support-oriented thing, and you play it as a quantity build. Because of that, it's in a very specific niche, and in World vs. World, in Circ play, it can also be used. So I think overall it's in high 8 tier for me. It's not S tier yet because it's just a little bit gimmicky and it's not that crazy good in the competitive modes that you would use it every single time. But I think in PvE it's very underrated, and even in World vs. World it's underrated. So I think it's a very good pick if you enjoy the support on a thief. All the builds shown in this video, you can also find dedicated guides to on my channel. So if you don't want to miss out any more content like tier lists, guides, and everything related to Guild Wars 2, be sure to subscribe. But now back to the video. Let's now continue with Engineer. So Engineer as Mechanist. I think Mechanist is very good in PvE. You have a crazy good solo build. You have very nice and easy builds to play as Condi, Elecmech, Power Elecmech, whatever. Full Condi Mechanist. It's crazy how much versatility Mechanist has in PvE. When it comes to World vs. World and PvP though, I would say Mechanist is not that good, especially if you're somewhat more skilled. If you're starting out the game, it's okay, you can use it as a roamer, but if you get in higher, let's say if you get in gold and stuff, you will get farmed with it. So this is for me why I wouldn't put it in S tier, even though it's really, really good in PvE. I would put it in high A tier, just because I think it's not worthwhile to pick it in competitive modes for the most part. And in Circblade, your mech dies instantly, so never use your mech there. So yeah, it's not S tier for me. Then we have Holosmith. I think Holosmith is interesting because Holosmith for me is extremely strong in Circblade, but when you look at, for example, PvP, it's not performing that crazy well. And in PvE, you have a very high damage number, but you have to put so much effort in to reach the same number actually that a Mechanist has to do with way less effort. So I would say in PvE, Holosmith pulls it actually down. So for me, in World vs. World, it would be S tier, but in PvP and PvE, it's not that good, so I would put it in A tier. I think Holosmith is a decent engineer build. Then we have Scrapper. Scrapper is for me an easy S tier. You can play easy support Scrapper. It's very good in World vs. World. You can play quickness, DPS, healing Scrapper in PvE. It has a very good solo build. It's just very well rounded. In PvP, it's not that good, but you can still play it. It has amazing burst. And I would say just an easy S tier build. You can play it in every game mode. It's working. And it's just so versatile what it can bring. It also with the gyro, it helps a lot to just get more safety for your team. It's really good. It's just a very good pick. Let's continue with the heavy armor classes. So let's start with Guardian. So Willbender for me, easy S tier. It got nerfed in all game modes, yes, but still, it's a very good pick. For roaming, it's a very decent pick in Circblade as well, definitely. In PvP, it's still very good, especially in ranked. And in PvE, it has a very good build for soloing. It has very good alacrity build. It has a very good DPS build. It's just very versatile. For me, Willbender in general is really, really good. Definitely an S tier build for all game modes. And especially if you enjoy the fast-paced Willbender playstyle, it's really good. Then we have Firebrand. Firebrand again, extremely strong. Probably one of the best supporters in World vs. World. It's not that crazy for roaming, but you also have a solo build for PvE. You have crazy amount of DPS if you really play it, and as a DPS build as well. It has decent usage in PvE if you really want to play it as a support there. It's quite challenging. It's not that crazy good in comparison to Chrono and Tempest, but it's still playable, so I would say for me S tier. Firebrand, very versatile kit and therefore just very useful in almost all game modes. It's really, really good. That's why an S tier. And then we have Dragon Hunter. Dragon Hunter is always DPS. It's just you can't play it that versatile. It's not as good as a solo build, but it has amazing DPS with the recent buffs to it. It's crazy how much DPS you can pull. It has crazy burst damage in PvE. It has very good sustained damage. You have multiple builds with spear, with greatsword, with longbow. It's really good. You can play it as a roamer. You can in World vs. World. You can play it as a Circ thing. It's really good. I think the only downside is it's just always a DPS build, and you can't play it that versatile. That's why I would put it in high A tier, because in PvP I would say it's decent, but it's not that crazy, and there's no solo build in PvE, so I would say it has some kind of builds that are missing, but in general it's very good at doing DPS, and that's useful in all game modes, so that's why it's an A tier, I would say. Let's now continue with Warrior. Warrior is a little bit harder because we have Bladestorm. I think Bladestorm for me is challenging to play in PvE, I would say. You have a solo build that is decent, but in group content, it's not that easy to play. It's quite high in the damage side, that's true, but you get dragged down by your competitive modes. It's just very, very bad, I have to say, in competitive modes. It's real. It got nerfed so many times, it's just not good anymore. So I would say Bladestorm is carried by its PvE into B tier, but if you just look at the competitive side, it's D tier. It's just not performing very well. On the other hand, we have Spellbreaker. Spellbreaker is really good, has amazing damage in PvE. Doesn't have the greatest group support, but it's a nice damage build. It also has a decent solo build. It is very good for dueling in PvP and World vs. World. It's also quite useful in Zerg play for boon ripping with the bubble and stuff. So I would say Spellbreaker, high A tier, if not S tier, depends a bit who you ask. I think it's a little bit, again, like DH, not as versatile, so that you can't play it in every single role and stuff where you want to put it in, just because it's not that crazy. But I would put it in high A tier for that. And then we have Berserker. That's another interesting build. It's very crazy aggressive in PvE as a support. Offensive quickness support, and also play it as a DPS. You have a very good solo build, so PvE is really good. In competitive modes, you play it as a Condi duelist, or you play it as some meme rival warrior or something like that. You can play a lot of builds. Also in Zerg play, it's actually decent. So I would say Berserker and Spellbreaker are very close together for me, because they fill also, both of them, quite a small niche, but they fill it very well. So I would say high A tier again. You could make an argument for putting both in low S tier. Depends a bit who you ask, but I personally think those are fair. They need some love in regard to some builds that they have to make it a little bit more fleshed out what they can do, especially when it comes to support. But I think they are really nice. So high A tier it is. And then we have Revenant. So Revenant, I would say, is in a weird spot, because Revenant has a very good build with Herald. So Herald in PvP and World vs. World is very good as a roamer. In Zerg play, it's not as good anymore, but it's still decent. And in PvE, it has a very good solo build. It has a decent quickness build. It's very good, actually, just for low intensity and boon up time, but it doesn't have the craziest damage. And I would say it's an S tier build for me. It's very useful in what it can do in all game modes. It's not, let's say, as versatile as it once was, because it got nerfed in the DPS compartment in PvE, and that makes it a little bit more lackluster. But you can play a Condi Herald, you can play a Power Herald in PvP, World vs. World. It's actually crazy how much builds variety you have there. It might not be the top tier builds, so not the craziest builds like an Untamed, for example, in PvP, but it's still a very worthwhile pick. So I would say S tier for Herald. Then we have Vindicator. Vindicator in the competitive modes is actually quite good. But, and that's the big part, I would say in PvE it can be used as a DPS build that is decent, but it's very lackluster in utility and what it brings. And in solo play, it's unkillable. It's crazy. If you play the unkillable Vindicator build that I posted a while ago, it's really good. But it's not as good in group play, and that's why I would put it in A tier, just because it's not performing that well in all parts of playing Guild Wars 2. So, in my opinion, especially good in dueling, in World vs. World, PvP. It's really good. It's actually really underrated. It's very skillful, and in World vs. World can also be used as a support and Zerg play. So I think that's why I would put it really high in A tier, because it has very nice usage in the competitive modes, but in PvE it's just a little bit lackluster, I would say, in the group content. And then we have Renegade. Renegade got gutted, I have to say, in World vs. World. It's actually completely gone. In Zerg play it's just very, very bad now. And in roaming it's also not that crazy. It can be played, don't get me wrong, but it's not that crazy. And in PvP, it's also not that crazy. Again, it's just not it doesn't provide that much from the trade line and stuff. So I would say in PvE, it can be a very nice fractal alacrity giver, but for solo content, it's also good, but not crazy. So I think for me, it's low A tier, if not B tier. I think it's B tier for me, because I think it's just oftentimes you want to play another elite spec from Revenant just to make sure you provide a little bit more utility. It's just, it got nerfed so many times, it's not as good anymore. It's my personal take. I think I like it a lot, especially as a DPS build in PvE, but it's just not where it once was. Let's now talk about light armor classes. So let's start with Necromancer. So Necromancer, we have Harbinger. I would say Harbinger is amazing in PvP and roaming. It's really good. It's not as good in World vs. World and Zerg play, but you can also make a nice solo build. It's a little bit more aggressive, but still. And you can also make it work in all roles as a DPS, as a quickness DPS. It's very nice, actually. The only thing it can't do is some kind of healing build, but that's fine. You don't have to have everything on a build. So I would say Harbinger for me is low S tier. It's a very good build. You can put it in almost any game mode and perform really well on it. Maybe you put it in A tier because it's a little bit more like those two, that they have some kind of lacking builds that they need. And I guess that's fair. Maybe you can put Harbinger in high A tier for that, because in Zerg play it's really not, you should not play Harbinger in Zerg play. Then we have Scourge. Scourge got really hard nerfed in World vs. World as well, so I would say it in World vs. World. You can play it as a Zerg still, but it's not crazy good. It's not as broken as it was before, I have to say. So that means in World vs. World, you shouldn't use it for roaming. In PvP, it's just garbage. You should never use a Scourge. It's just tanky and doesn't do anything. Please don't play that in PvP. And in PvE, it's really good. It's just straight up, it has a really good solo build. It has amazing low effort builds that can perform really well. It has amazing DPS. So I think it gets carried by PvE, but I can't put it higher than A tier because in the competitive modes, it's just not that good. It's just not. That's why it's an A tier. Yeah. So overall, PvE really good, but in the competitive modes, not that. Then we have Reaper. Reaper is amazing. Reaper has crazy good DPS. It can be only played as a DPS build. It doesn't support your allies, but that means it does it really well, the DPS. It is a solo build that is amazing. It has multiple solo builds actually that are really good. It is crazy good in the DPS compartment. It's very tanky in PvE. It is very good in PvP right now as a Condi Reaper. You can also play it in Zerg. You can also play it as a roamer. I would say S tier build for me. Reaper really, really good in all modes of play, while it only does DPS. That's the most thing. It is tanky and does DPS, but it doesn't support. But still, it's really good with it. That's why it's here. Let's talk now about Elementalist. So Elementalist, we have Catalyst. So Catalyst is amazing. It has amazing boon access. It has amazing utility for your group as well. And it's just very strong. You can play it as a healer in PvE. You can play it as a DPS. You can play it as a quick DPS. You have a crazy good solo build. Just PvE is carrying this into S tier almost. And then it's also very strong in roaming and PvP. It's insane. You can also play it in Zerg. It's just one of the best builds out there for every game mode. It's insane how much you can make it work. Just Catalyst is insane. It's just an upgraded core Elementalist, but it's upgraded by so much that it's actually really good. It doesn't mean that it's the most unique spec, it just gets one more button, so to say, but it's very good in what it wants to do, so that's why it's here. And we have Tempest. So Tempest got nerfed in World vs. World in PvE, so that it was previously in S tier in my last tier list, but the nerfs made it go into A tier. Reason for that is the DPS in PvE is not that good anymore, it's more like a healer now. It's still decent, don't get me wrong, as a DPS, it's still performing quite well there, but it's harder to pull off and it's not as broken as it once was because it was completely broken the last patch. So I would put it lower. The solo build is also not as good as the Catalyst one, and for World vs. World it got nerfed quite hard, and I would say the best one is in PvP as a support Tempest. It's really good there, but I think it's a high A tier build for me because it's just a little bit less broken as it once was, and that's just a little bit overshadowed by Catalyst in my opinion. And then we have Weaver. I think Weaver, the strongest Weaver playstyle that you can do is probably in World vs. World as a fresh air Weaver roaming. That says a lot, because in Zerg play you can't play it other than a full glass cannon DPS, which is decent if you can perform on it, but most of the time, if you're not that skilled, it's not working out very well. And in PvP, it's just not good. And in PvE, it's also, you sweat a lot to get your numbers for the most part, and it's not performing very well. So I would put it in C tier overall. I'm sorry, I really like Weaver, but it's just overall, it really needs a rework to some extent. It's just not performing that well. I think it lacks in almost every game mode, and that means it's low. It's better than this D tier builds for sure, and it's probably also better than the C tier builds, but it's not as good as the B tier builds, I have to say. And lastly, we have Mesmer. So Mesmer is interesting. We have Virtuoso, which is extremely good in World vs. World as a roamer. It's extremely good in Zerg play because you have unblockable 1200 ranged projectiles that can pierce through reflect. It's really, really good. You have crazy boon strip. It's amazing. You have a very good PvP build as well. You have amazing DPS builds in PvE. You have very good solo builds as well. For me, easy S tier. It's even after the nerfs with the last balance patch, it's still broken. Spear is crazy good on it. It's really good. You can play it as a Condi or DPS power version. It doesn't matter. It's always very good. Just a very good pick. Doesn't support the allies, but still very good. Then we have Mirage. Mirage is really good in competitive modes right now. You can play it as a greatsword one for Zerg play. You can play it as a spear roamer. You can play it as a spear roamer in PvP as well. It's insane how much damage it can put out there. It is quite decent in PvE as now as well as a DPS build. It's quite challenging, but it's very good there as well. It has some crazy good solo builds as well, so I would put it in high A tier. just because it's in PvE a little bit on the, let's say, niche builds version. So you can't really play it in every single group comp because it's just a little bit weird stuff, as Alacrity Giver is weird, and it's also sometimes you have a really high crazy condi and power DPS build, but they are quite challenging to play, and sometimes they just can't perform as well as a power word, for example, or most of the time actually. So I would say high as A tier for me. And lastly, we have Chronomancer. I think Chronomancer is interesting. It got nerfed very hard in World vs. World. It is still playable there, but in roaming I would not play it for the most part. I would rather go for Word or Mirage. And that's why I would put it lower than last time, because last time I had it in S tier, but this time it is actually not that crazy good in World vs. World anymore. It's still very good as a PvP supporter, and it is absolutely broken in PvE. So I would also put it in maybe in low S tier just because of that, because it's so broken in PvE, and it still can be played in World vs. World. And of course PvP is still very good. I think it's better than Mirage for the most part, if you don't look at World vs. World. So it depends what you value more. If you want to have a build that is more for World vs. World, go for Mirage. If you want to have a build that is more for PvP and PvE, go for Chrono. So yeah, I think it depends highly what kind of game modes you value. This video was made before the 15th of April balance patch changes go live, but we already know how they will affect the game, and in my opinion they will not change the rating that I did in this tier list. Let me know your takes in the comments. This is just my personal take again, and I hope you enjoyed this quick tier list. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks to all my supporters on YouTube, Twitch and Patreon. Thanks Malice, thanks Lane, and I hope to see you all in the next video.